Hi, my name is Glazier, and I'm about to talk about my place in Canadian history. And this is how it all started. One day in England, my great-grandmother found out that she was pregnant at the age of 16. Due to her coming from a wealthy family, her parents did not take the news very well. There was so much tension in the family that my great-grandmother made the life-changing decision to move to Canada with her newlywed husband. They decided to go to Canada for several different reasons. The main reason was that they liked the fact Canada was a British colony. They also liked how it was the closest country west of Britain, and finally, they liked the idea of a new start and the many opportunities Canada would bring. My great-grandpa settled in Dundas, Ontario, and my great-grandma and the baby came a year later. There were many struggles that great-grandparents faced when they first came to Canada. My great-grandfather had a grade 4 level education, so this made it very difficult for him to get a job. Him being the hard worker that he was, decided to take a corresponding course which enabled him to work in the day and go to school at night. Finally, after getting his high school diploma, he was able to work at a higher paying job. His first major job was being a draftsman for the Canadian Westinghouse, located in Hamilton. However, my great-grandfather would not keep this job due to a jerk who kept stealing his ideas and taking credit for them. This would turn out to be one of the worst decisions of his life because a year later, the Depression hit Canada. My great-grandfather was out of a job for 8 whole years, leaving his family hungry and dirt poor. Him and his wife decided to become music teacher, and thus their family was back on track. After having many children, my grandmother Joyce Knappman was finally born. Around 25 years later, she met the man of her dreams, my grandfather, Ken Potier. My grandfather has done several things to help Canada, but none will be more significant than when he served in the Army. When Ken was around 20 years old, before he met my grandma, he decided to enroll in the Army for several reasons. Conscription was probably the main one. Also, he joined because he liked the idea of a free ride to university after the war was over. And finally, most of his siblings had already joined. He joined late in the war in 1943 and fought in Italy. While sailing over, his transport ship was constantly targeted by German U-boats, so the transport ship had to do a zigzag maneuver to dodge them. He was in the Irish Regiment of Canada, 5th Division of Canada, part of the 8th Army that was also known as the Montgomery's British Army. Ken's brother joined the Royal Canadian Navy and fought in the Battle of the Atlantic. Unfortunately, a U-boat targeted and torpedoed the ship he was on. Amazingly, he didn't die and only suffered a broken hip. Meanwhile, my grandma's brother decided to join the Royal Canadian Air Force. However, by the time he was trained and ready to fight, the war was already over. Even though my grandma didn't join any Canadian force, she still did her part in the home front and took over a job that was dominated mainly by men. She became a farmerette, along with some of her sisters and friends. She made 50 cents an hour, which wasn't bad back in those times. After the war was over, my grandfather got the full ride to the University of Toronto that he was promised for serving in the Army. He later majored in engineering and business, allowing him to work for a steel company called the Page Hershey Limited in Montreal as a salesman. He later got transferred to North Bay, where they had their first child. And finally, he got transferred to Toronto, where him and his wife had their final 2 children, one of them being my mother, Suzanne Potier. Although my mother did not go to university, she was doing extremely well with a cosmetic business that she ran by herself. Her successfulness must have drew my father, Marvin Glazier, to her when sparks flew instantly. My future parents were going out for around a year when my dad finally popped the question and my mom said yes. 6 months later, my parents had their wedding. It wasn't until after they got married that my dad revealed his age. My mom's jaw dropped to the floor when she found out that he was 18 years older than her. However, they moved past it and love was stronger than any little number, even though it was 2 digits. They lived in Caledon, Ontario when they had their first child and my eldest brother Mitch. Anticipating a larger family, my parents decided to move to the quiet city of Kleinburg, where my second brother Matt was born. Last but not least, I came along, and here I am now, talking about how it all started. One mistake that caused my great-grandmother to rebel against their parents and move to Canada. Thank you for listening to my place in Canadian history.